Hey, this is Dr. Max of Maximal Wellness, teaching practical ways to live a fuller, healthier life. So this month is National Nutrition Month, so I'm talking about the foundational things you can do to support your health and well-being. Now, unfortunately, our soil is not what it used to be. It's really degraded. You have to eat 2 apples now for every 1 apple that our grandparents ate just to get the same amount of nutrition. So the American Medical Association and even the CDC now recommends that everybody take a multivitamin or mineral. So some of the ones that I sell at my clinic are ones using whole foods like Catalin. This one is made on an organic farm in Wisconsin, where all of the foods that go in here are grown a stone's throw away from the facility where it's processed. So everything is really vital, really rich, really nutrient dense. Primal Multi, this one is a very good broad spectrum multivitamin mineral. Uses all of the versions of vitamins that are bioavailable and easily absorbed by the body. So when you take this one, your body will recognize it. The problem with taking something like a Centrum, that's a really inexpensive vitamin, is that those forms of the vitamins are often synthetic and really hard for the body to absorb and digest. So even if you're taking a Centrum multivitamin, there's no guarantee that your body's actually utilizing it. And unfortunately, some of those cheaper multivitamins also use ingredients that can be dangerous to your health. For example, a really inexpensive version of vitamin B2, cobalamin, is bound, chelated to cyanide, cyanocobalamin, because it's really inexpensive to produce and they can put them in multivitamins and people get some vitamin B12. Unfortunately, they're also getting a dose of cyanide, which of course is a poison for your mitochondria. So you want to get forms of vitamins that your body can recognize and use that aren't going to cause any ill effects for you. I also carry this prenatal that was designed with morning sickness in mind, because a lot of my pregnant patients, I work with a lot of pregnant patients and a lot of kids, really can't handle the morning sickness, and that makes it really difficult for them to take anything like a multivitamin, which during pregnancy is even more important than the average person because you're trying to build a whole new human life. So if you're not getting those micronutrients, if you're not getting folate, if you're not getting your DHA from fish oil, then your baby, your fetus, isn't benefiting from that. So it's really important to make sure that they can actually digest it. This one's great. I recommend a multivitamin to all my patients who aren't eating a ton of plants and vegetables. So we're talking about omega-3 fats. Now, omega-3 fats are very deficient in the American diet. Because we eat a lot of red meat, a lot of shellfish, a lot of processed foods, we get a lot of omega-6 fats that are very good for ramping up inflammation when we have a new injury, but not very good at calming down and resolving inflammation when we don't want to feel pain anymore. That primarily comes from the omega-3 fats. You can find these in plants like flax, walnuts, hemp, but the problem is the plant-based omega-3 fats are not very well metabolized by the body to the active form that's found in things like fish oil. Only about 5, maybe 7%, if you're lucky, of those plant-based fats will turn into the long-chain form. So I recommend most of my patients get a fish oil. If they don't like the taste of fatty fish like sardines, anchovies, salmon, well, guess what? You got to take a fish oil. So to get a good fish oil, you want to look at the label. There's going to be 2 major ingredients. These are the long-chain fats and the active ingredients in the fish oil that help to create those molecules that resolve inflammation. Different omega-3s will have different effects. The EPA is better for heart health. The DHA is especially helpful for brain health. About half, 50% of all the fat in your brain is omega-3 fat. So getting a supplement that's rich in DHA can be really great for cognitive decline, to help improve IQ scores in children, and just support your own brain health and inflammation. If you are a vegetarian or a vegan, you're going to want to get an algae oil. Like I said, those plant-based omegas from flax, hemp, walnuts, you're just not going to be able to utilize much of them. So you want to get an algae omega. This is the algae that the fish that are used in fish oil eat to get their omega-3s. So you can skip the middleman if you're a vegetarian and get the algae oil. Now, to get that anti-inflammatory effect, you're going to want at least 2,000 milligrams of the EPA and DHA a day. Some of my patients, if they're really inflamed, they'll want 3,000 to 4,000 milligrams a day. If you get less than that, it'll be good for your heart or your brain, but it won't really calm down inflammation. Now, if you're going to be taking a high-dose fish oil like that, you're going to want to look out for a couple things. You're going to want to make sure it's from a reputable company that has unadulterated fish oil, that hasn't been left on the shelf too long, because as an oil, it can go rancid because it gets unstable. So you want to make sure it's from a good quality company like Nordic Naturals, Standard Process, Carlson's, so that you're actually getting a good quality fish oil. And then if you're the type that has a sensitive digestion, too much fat at once, gives you stomach upset, makes you burp, you want to break it up into pieces throughout the day. Maybe one soft gel with each meal so you can get that therapeutic dose and actually calm down inflammation. So, why greens powder? Well, unfortunately, the soil in the United States is not as rich as it used to be. Nowadays, you have to eat 2 apples for every 1 apple our grandparents ate just to get the same amount of nutrition. You remember that old saying that, you need to get 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day in order to meet your needs. Well, now it's more like 7 to 14. So, for most of my patients, they're not getting 7 to 14 servings of fruits and vegetables. Some of them, I can hardly get them to eat any vegetables at all. So, for many people, I recommend a greens powder. This one is really great. This one comes from an organic farm in Wisconsin where most of the plants and vegetables, fruits, what have you, that are in here were grown on that organic farm a stone's throw away from the facility where it was processed. So this is going to be helpful for a variety of different things. One, green foods are really rich in chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is really helpful for human health in several ways. One, it helps to build up the blood. In my vegetarian patients, if they're anemic, I'll often give them lots of chlorophyll because the structure of chlorophyll is very similar to hemoglobin in the blood, so it can help to build up those red blood cells. It's good for detox. Green foods are full of antioxidants to help to scavenge free radicals and help to clean out things like heavy metals and pesticides from the blood. There was this fascinating study done in pregnant women in Japan that showed that the more chlorophyll they ate, the less dioxin there was in their breast milk. Now, dioxin is a really bad byproduct of industrial manufacturing that can cause major health problems. So the fact that something as simple as increasing your chlorophyll can cut down on that is pretty awesome. Another great reason for a greens powder is it supports your immune system. Now, some of my patients, they're so sick and so sensitive that they have to go on a period of an elimination diet for a while to avoid all those inflammatory foods. But once we've calmed that down and healed the gut and filled it with the right microbes, those good probiotics, then we want to try expanding the diet. The reason for that is your immune system is primarily in your gut, and it's always paying attention and it's always on guard for infection. So the more diversity and variety of foods you can eat, that you can expose your immune system to so that the immune system knows this is all okay, the better. So what better way to do that than something like a greens powder that has over 40 different fruits and vegetables in it? The last thing I wanted to mention with greens powder is, and I forget. The last thing to know about greens powder is that it's super easy to implement. So everybody's really busy now. I hardly have time to meal prep or make all of these nutritious foods for my family. My wife and I, we make the effort and we do our best, but we're not perfect. So on those days where I'm too busy to make sure I'm getting those fruits and vegetables, you can bet I'm really happy to have something like this because I know I'm covering my bases, supporting my immune system, building up my blood, have that detox capacity, protecting myself from things like radiation, pesticides, and helping myself because our soil's been so degraded. Maybe if I was eating all those fruits and vegetables anyway, maybe I still wouldn't be getting the same amount of nutrition as they can pack into this freeze-dried powder that's easy to mix with your water or your liquid. So this month I'm talking about the foundational supplemental support that you can use to support your whole body and wellness. If I only had to choose a few things to support my whole body, what would they be? One of them is vitamin D. Vitamin D is incredibly important for the body. It's not just for bones. There are receptors for vitamin D all over the body. Basically, every system of the body uses vitamin D. When I was in grad school, my thesis was on the effects of vitamin D in inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's and colitis, and how beneficial that can be. So we're talking the immune system, not the bones at all. Now, because we live in the Pacific Northwest, I would say about 90% of my patients are vitamin D deficient if they're not already taking a supplement, because we just don't get enough exposure to that ultraviolet light from the sun during the day. The only time that we can really get that in Oregon is in the summer, usually between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And even if you're outside in the summer, if you're not exposing your skin to sunlight, you're not going to be getting enough vitamin D. So really simple to supplement, but incredibly helpful. There are a couple different forms that I like to give to my patients. A typical adult dose will be something like 4,000 to 5,000 IUs. That's 100 to 125 micrograms. This is enough to make sure you can bring up your blood vitamin D level to an optimal level, which is somewhere between 50 and 100 nanograms, I believe. But really simple to get that blood test done to see if you're deficient, and if you need to take something like this. And even if you just want to take it prophylactically, because we live in Oregon, the Pacific Northwest with all the rain, vitamin D is incredibly safe, has a very wide safety profile, very hard to overdo it, let's say. Some people will take vitamin D with vitamin K2. This is another vitamin that's used to help mineralize and support bone growth. So when you combine the vitamin D and the vitamin K2, that will help to make sure that the calcium that the vitamin D brings from your gut into your bloodstream will go to your bones and your tissues to help build up the strength of those skeletal bones. For some of my patients, I recommend Cataplex D. This is a whole food version of vitamin D, because sometimes if your metabolism is just so dysfunctional that supplementing with vitamin D isn't doing anything for you, you're not getting all those other cofactors and enzymes that the body needs in order to utilize vitamin D effectively, you may need a whole food form. I had a patient, a good friend of mine, who is a naturopathic doctor, and she took 5,000 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D for months, but she was still deficient on her blood lab levels. So we got her taking Cataplex D, the whole food form, so her body could actually recognize and use it, and within a month, she was up to the optimal level. So, vitamin D for foundational health. So I'm going over what I consider the foundational things for people to help support their own health. If you're only going to have a few supplements, these are the ones. So one of the major topics is probiotics. I sell a few here. Well, probiotics and prebiotics. Prebiotics are the fibers that feed the probiotics. So for people that have a really healthy gut, or trying to reduce the risk of infection, say if you have some toddlers at home and they're in preschool always getting sick, something like a prebiotic fiber can be really helpful. This one's great because it has a natural sweet taste to it. Because it is a fiber though, I always recommend that patients start out small, say 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon a day mixed in liquid, and do that for about a week. Just make sure you don't get any stomach upset, and gradually increase like that. So say 1/4, and then 1/2, and then 3/4, and then up to a teaspoon a day. And research shows this will cut down illness for toddlers about 30 to 40%, which as a parent can be a godsend. So in terms of probiotics, you're going to want to look for a few different things. You're going to want to look for a variety of different strains. Some of the families of bacteria that are really helpful are Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, and now we have a lot of great research on things like Akkermansia and Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. You want to look for that wide variety because your gut needs a lot of diversity in order to be optimally healthy, to make sure that no matter what you eat, whatever you ingest, whatever comes your way, your body and your microbiome can metabolize and handle it. So when you're looking for a good probiotic, you want to make sure that it lists the strain. So you look on the back and it'll say something like Lactobacillus reuteri, and then typically if it has the strain name there, like LDC13 or some crazy combination of numbers and letters, that means that that particular strain of probiotics has demonstrated some benefit in a research study that supports human health. Because you can take all the probiotics you want, but if it doesn't list the strain, there's no guarantee that it'll survive the stomach acid in your stomach, that it'll actually make it down to your digestion, that once it's there it'll actually be able to adhere, or that it'll have any benefit for you health-wise. Really important to make sure you're getting that strain. I like to think of it as different breeds of dog. You wouldn't expect a Chihuahua to be able to do the same thing as like a Mastiff, right? Same species, different strains. Now, another thing that's really important is to make sure you're getting some kind of probiotic yeast. Some common ones are things like Saccharomyces boulardii, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Basically, the probiotic yeast help to crowd out yeast that can become opportunists and can cause other health problems such as candida. Many people and many of my patients suffer from candida overgrowth because they've had a really poor diet and made poor choices, or they just indulge too much in starches, sugar, alcohol, things that feed that candida in the gut. And then because that's the only food you may be eating, those are the microbes that grow in your gut. So suddenly your body's overrun by candida. And when that happens, then the candida starts to send out chemicals making you crave sugar, crave alcohol, crave those starchy carbs because they want to be fed. And it can be hard to kill that off. But if you're supplementing with a probiotic yeast, that helps to crowd out the candida to make sure it doesn't overgrow and can provide other benefits as well, such as in some women who suffer from recurrent urinary tract infections or get pain down in the groin. Sometimes supplementing with a probiotic yeast can be really beneficial.